My name is Fenn. I'm the president of ITRenew. I'm super excited to be here. I'm going to talk today about our thesis, which is that a global circular IT hardware industry maximizes both the financial opportunity associated with IT hardware and the sustainability of IT hardware. And we're going to talk about why that's so important. Now, we've talked about the financial opportunity in other OCP forums in the past. I'm going to focus really today on this notion of full cost accounting and the sustainability implications of the infrastructure that we're running at the scale that we're running at, and the potential really positive impact we can have if we think about moving to a circular economy. Now remember, a circular economy is distinct from the traditional economic model that has governed pretty much every industry, which is linear, which is take things from materials, make goods and assets, and then dispose of them, ideally responsibly. But it's a very disposable kind of linear model. In a circular economic model, we think about things more sophisticatedly, and we try to architect secondary and tertiary loops of life for that equipment. So we're keeping assets in their highest utility value as long as possible and deferring the need for new manufacturing as long as possible. And the impact is very positive from a sustainability perspective. So as we dive in, just some context on ITRenew. ITRenew is in the business of orchestrating circular data centers, right? We've been around for about 20 years. We have deep relationships with many, many hyperscale cloud operators. We work with them to securely decommission their assets at the end of first lifetimes. And then we have engineering and services at resources and investment and innovation to try to transform that hyperscale technology into solutions for the broader marketplace. And when we do that, what we're really doing is we're catalyzing total cost of ownership gains on both sides of the equation, right? So it's a combination of products and services that collectively stand to transform us in this industry to 100% circular, right? To move away from this linear take, make, use, dispose model into a circular model, which drives maximal financial value and sustainability value. So when we think about the context here, obviously there is immense, powerful, positive potential associated with all of the work that goes on in these cloud data centers, whether they're hyperscale, mid-scale, private cloud enterprise. Everybody who's hearing this and everybody who's in this industry is working to do amazingly positive things, right? But at the same time, a lot of this is, the infrastructure is out of sight, out of mind, right? So when we think about cloud, we're not necessarily aware of the infrastructure that's running it and the impact. So a few stats here. Globally, we create about 50 million metric tons of waste every year, e-waste. That's the amount that would fill up 18-wheel trucks stacked in line from New York to Bangkok and back. It's an immense amount of e-waste. At the same time, we're consuming a tremendous amount of energy, on pace in the next 15 or so years to consume more industry in the compute globally than we produce in that year, right? Things like AI, tremendous powerful potential, but they're energy hogs. AI is going to account for more than 10% of the total energy produced by 2025, right? This is happening very fast. We're going to run out of materials to make components. People are talking about deep sea mining. We are not going the right direction from a sustainability perspective because of the sheer scale. And it's our collective obligation to try to work on this together, right? Now, we're doing some things really, really well. Everybody is committed to renewable. You see lots of news in the headlines about progress that people are making in terms of greener grids and in power efficiency, PUE of data centers. All of the people are committing big dollars and focused on this area, and it's absolutely essential. We cannot stop. We absolutely need to keep doing this. But the big question that we've asked recently, and some that's behind the research, is if we're looking at the use phase only, are we looking at the whole picture? And it turns out that there are, before you ever turn something on in a data center, there's a lot of energetic impact that goes into the mining and manufacture and assembly and transportation of that equipment, right? Think of that as the pre-use phase. And then on the other end of the operational phase, when something is decommissioned from a data center, it goes through some sort of an end-of-life process that generally involves sorting, shredding, and smelting, right? And return into the recycling waste stream. Now, what we've asked is, let's do a life cycle analysis of OCP specific equipment because it's open, we have better access and so forth, and because it's the business we're in, we're able to do a full life cycle analysis of compute equipment going into these data centers and to analyze the carbon impact of each of these three phases. So looking at it more specifically, this is a view of sort of the system boundaries of our model, right? We start with where materials are mined, how they're processed, where they're transported to for component manufacturing. So whether that's a CPU, whether that's DRAM chips, whether those are hard drives, power equipment, cooling, rack infrastructure itself. We look at the processes and the locations for all of that manufacturing. And then the same thing for assembly of systems in a different location. And then of course we analyze the use phase energy. And at the end of life, we look at the processes for kind of returning all of that material into a recycling process. And of course the inputs are raw materials and energy, and the outputs are emissions and waste. And that's what we've quantified in the model. Now back to the previous view of it, it turns out it matters a lot. So in our analysis, we looked at several locations and different kind of constructs of where people run infrastructure and so forth. This particular data comes from a use case where materials are mined in a variety of locations where those resources exist. Components are manufactured in China, assembly is done in Eastern Europe, and the data center is being run, in this case, in Sweden. And it turns out that pre-use phase is 3/4 of the total CO2 impact of the rack. All right, so it's an enormous amount. Again, we're gonna keep focusing, we all need to keep focusing on the operational phase, but what this does is it tells us where to look next. And pre-use phase is about mining, manufacturing, and assembly. So what we're trying to do with a circular is say, what if we could defer some of that, right? What would be the impact of creating a secondary life and deferring some of that pre-use phase impact? So putting another way, you see here in the orange bar, embodied content is the 76%. That's a very significant portion. The yellow is the operational input. This is a view of the base case scenario. When you move to a second life and you cascade equipment that may be run for 3 years in a hyperscale environment down to a secondary user that could run that equipment potentially for as long as another 6 years, right? Aligned very much with the technology treadmills, that perfectly valid, and the economic life analysis of that equipment. So you see, of course, the embodied energy decreases significantly because you've taken that server and you've deferred the need for a new server to be built for that next period of time. Now, operational energy does go up slightly because, of course, there's older equipment running for slightly longer. It's not quite as efficient as the new equipment. So on that portion that was only 22%, you see a little bit of a boost. But the net impact is that when you move to a circular model and you enable a second life, then you can save about 25% of the total CO2 impact of that system. Now, how big is that? Well, it's the same as if we were able to get another 68% benefit on the use phase energy, right? So think about trying to squeeze another nearly 70% out of all the efficiency gains we've made in the operational use. And this becomes a pretty attractive way to have very outsized gains, complementary, of course, to the use phase improvements that we need to continue. So then the second question is, you know, historically, there's been a perception that sustainability is in conflict in some way with financial value and financial return. So the obvious question is, well, if that's the right thing to do, if circular is the right thing from a sustainability perspective, what about total cost of ownership? Is it going to cost me more? And the answer is no. The answer is that if you make logical assumptions about Moore's law, if you make logical assumptions about the way IT equipment is depreciated, power costs, utilization rates, and so forth, the TCO of the same system is also about 24% better. Now, importantly, this is the impact of moving the same equipment from a linear model into a circular model. This is not yet a discussion about comparing circular equipment TCO to new OEM proprietary equipment, right? That's a different calculation, and the TCO of that calculation is even better, approaching 50%. So again, put more context here, right? Gartner thinks there are 46 million servers that are going to come out of data centers that have an average of 50 racks or more between 2019 and 2023. So if we were able to take all of those 46 million servers and give them a second life, that would result in 31 million metric tons of CO2 being saved, right? So how big is that? Well, it's the equivalent of nearly 7 million cars coming off of the road. So this is an enormous amount of potential impact simply by using the technology for the time period that it was designed, right? hyperscale companies refresh equipment for very good reasons at very fast rates, but that doesn't mean the technology is dead at that point. And the opportunity of circular is to fully capitalize on the lifetime, which is natural for this equipment, right? So huge possible impact, financial benefit, sustainability impact. So then the question is, well, what does this look like in practice in our industry, right? So I talked a little bit about the circular economy model at the beginning and cascading these multiple loops of life. In our world, what that looks like is you start from the very beginning with design for circularity in mind. So you think about systems in context not only of their primary use case features and functions, but also in the context of not precluding secondary lives. So this is work that we do. ITRenew is in this business. We do this work with all of our hyperscale partners. We work with them on optimizing for the whole life cycle equipment. That includes some design choices. It also includes strategies and timelines around what's the best decommissioning timeline to maximize the full value, right? And then from there, we move into optimizing the pathways by which equipment moves into secondary markets. So in the old world, what people have done for a long time now is run equipment in primary data centers, use that equipment, and then do a pretty good job at harvesting parts and selling valuable parts, but then recycling the majority of the rack. But if you think about that from a mass perspective, you know, selling CPU and memory leaves some 2,000 pounds of equipment that is not being turned into secondary equipment, is going straight into the recycling stream. The opportunity with circular is to leave that as the least worst alternative. It's fine, but let's go there last. Let's first start with taking racks out of data centers, recertifying them, and turning them into solutions which can be rack scale solutions for downstream global markets. That's the best thing we can do, right? We can, besides internal reuse, that's the best thing. We don't lose any of the equipment, right? The next best thing is for non-rack scale employments, still keep intact that compute and storage equipment that is so valuable and that had such an impact from its manufacture. Keep that intact, take that to market in a variety of other form factors. And then, of course, recertify the components, resell the components, and then responsibly recycle all that's left. And what this does is it provides a suite of solutions that go into other scale cloud service providers, enterprise environments such as gaming and so forth, edge environments and retail, telco, energy, and so forth, right? So the circular economy is connecting all of these various players and markets with a variety of services and solutions. So it sounds daunting, right? That's a big change from the way we've done things historically. So what does it take to deliver it? Well, the foundation is open, right? The OCP community is at the core of this. Open hardware is something that the major hyperscale partner providers have been benefiting from for years. The rest of the global markets have been less able to do so, but it's the foundation. And we'll talk about how we get to open for all. Open hardware. Importantly, investment in open systems firmware as well. Super important, right? Helps us as the provider of these circular solutions to be able to support them better, upgrade them better, secure them better, all of the essential things. So open is step one. Then you have to invest in hardware and software engineering to take what was designed for very specific hyperscale environments that have a unique set of engineering resources and characteristics and transform them into solutions that are relevant globally, right? So there's hardware and software engineering. Then of course, there's global operations and logistics, right? You have to take equipment out of a variety of distributed data centers around the world, do the transformation, and then resell, create, and catalyze the downstream markets. And all of this has to happen at an immense scale, right? Most hyperscale data centers have many millions of servers in them. And so the scale that we're talking about in orchestrating this new circular model is immense, right? So it's very technology enabled, it's automated, and it's fueled by the engineering and innovation. Importantly though, it's also about a shared mindset and a changed ethos. We have to recognize collectively that this is in our interests to do. It's without compromise. You get the financial benefit and you get sustainability benefit. And at the scale that we operate, we don't have a choice. We have to look to new models and business model innovation as much as technology innovation in order to make sure that we are not trashing the planet as we do all the powerful work that we're doing. This is happening, as I said. So I want to introduce Sesame by ITRenew. Sesame by ITRenew is the rack scale solutions business that I just talked about, right? So This is proven hyperscale technology designed by the best engineers in the world, transformed into solutions that are accessible for all, right? Warranted, supportable, burned in, high quality, no compromise to quality or performance, as we've seen in early data, and available at very significant scale, predictably homogeneous in ways that were never before possible. And importantly, because it's circular, because it's a second life, we're able to bring those no compromise solutions to market with truly disruptive TCO, as I mentioned before, on the order of 50% in many cases, right? So it's really bringing this, it's really the investment in the connective tissue that connects that upstream initial technology with the broader use cases, right? So think about this as certified pre-owned BMWs with 5,000 miles on them, right? So you've driven it off the lot, much, much, much better economics, but exactly the same characteristics and performance and quality that you would expect from something new. OCP is talking about open for all, right? It's a key theme, and a huge portion of the collective community's objective here is to bring the benefit of open, bring the benefit of OCP to the broader markets, right? So this is a huge piece of, we're not just throwing technology over the wall here. There is real innovation happening to catalyze this OCP clay into solutions that are integrated and can be supported and really easily just plugged in and deployed in a variety of different workload environments and for common workloads where people don't have tens of thousands of engineers and they don't have infinite budgets. So here's an example. Sesame for Open Systems is designed for Kubernetes environments, for virtualized environments. It comes with various software certifications that hyperscalers would not have been able to have ever had need to do. We've tested all these things. We've plugged it. You literally can just roll them in, and some of our partners have shown this. You can run them into your data center and be up and going in minutes, right? AI ML, absolutely imperative solution. We're doing this too, right? So we're taking OCP racks coming out of environments and transforming them into the right AI-focused configurations for the downstream markets. And the same thing for converged, right? So the idea here is everything that you would get and you would expect from a traditional OEM partner, now you get on open, you get with the same level of support and warranty and the same ease of deployment and management, right? So truly a win-win, and we think this is poised to catalyze this motion of open for all and bring the benefit of OCP to the broader markets. Now, just in conclusion here, I mentioned that I wasn't going to talk too much about the financial opportunity associated with this today because we've spoken about that in the past, but it is important to summarize. There is on the order of between $50 and $70 billion of value recovery opportunity that is currently left on the table, falling through the cracks for the hyperscale community. Companies that are running more than a couple of million servers in their environments, if you're just decommissioning and selling and harvesting components, you're missing a huge opportunity to recapture more value in the form of rack scale solutions and remanufactured solutions. That's the upstream side of the puzzle. That's the primary users. On the downstream side, most companies, enterprises, cloud service providers, telcos are much more constrained by budgets. And they're also much more beholden, for a variety of reasons, to proprietary traditional models, right? So as a result, there's about $10 billion a year that is currently blocked in the market, which is pent up demand for IT infrastructure, which is being held back because they don't have access and the ability to use open infrastructure, right? The circular model, these recertified solutions stand to do that. Now, as we've talked about today, huge impact on both CO2e and total system level, total cost of ownership. Last thing I want to talk about on a different thread for open for all is that half the world is still not online. And UN Sustainable Development Goals include a universal access goal, and they claim that there's a $100 billion funding gap to get there. So I would contend that if we can orchestrate these truly circular models, that we could go a long way towards bridging some of that gap by bringing like new excellent equipment at very disruptive economics, not only into enterprise and service provider markets, but also into parts of the world where there's particular need and particular constraint. So truly open for all. Very glad to be here today talking about this. Look forward to working with the community because it is a community effort to drive this transformation and to bring the benefits of open to everybody out there in a circular model, which we think is transformative, and it's time for it to do it today. Thank you very much. I appreciate the chance to be here.